Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Committee of a Whole for June 26th. And if you could please call the roll, Ms. Boak.
Councilmember Wood?
Here.
Councilmember Garza? Councilmember Hussein?
Here.
Councilmember Spatafor?
Present.
Councilmember Spitzley?
Here.
Councilmember Jackson?
Present.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Cost?
Here.
7 members present. You have a quorum of the committee.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we have the minutes for June 12th, and Councilmember Hussein.
Sure, I'll move the meeting minutes as written.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. At this time, it's an opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment, please come up to the podium and state your name for the record. And you will have 3 minutes.
So I'm Nicholas Zandy, and I am here to speak about so 2 things on the agenda. Those are resolutions D and E. Now, Resolution D, you've probably heard my opinions on the budget quite a lot, and just how messy the whole budget thing has been. Honestly, all I'm going to say about it is that there are certain departments that have way too much spending, especially the mayor's office, which it's spent a lot. And I know the mayor of the city of Lansing uses the phrase, it's required by state law, which I'm like, where exactly is that? I don't know, but still. And also, E, I'm going to talk a bit more about right here. And that is specifically 2 things. Charter Township of Lansing versus Barb Byram, the Ingham County Clerk, and City of Lansing. First off, considering the whole mess going on in the Charter Township of Lansing is just, why does the Charter Township still really need to exist? I feel like it should just be absorbed into the City of Lansing and East Lansing as well. And Hulan, I assume this is referring to someone related to Anthony Hulan. If this is misinformation, I apologize. But honestly, if it is related, I really think Mr. Hulan really does need, that Anthony Hulan does need justice for his, shall I say, untimely murder by police. F, something I didn't initially plan on discussing until I looked at the bottom. I do support funding for the Morris Park pool. That pool has been in ruins for years on end, and there needs to be funds for it, and I'm actually glad that they're actually bringing this to a vote, and I 100% support that. It's not every day the city actually does something positive. That's all I'm going to say, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time?
Just briefly, as far as the budget carryovers and amendment goes, just know that I will be down here until you guys restore the funds for Parks and Rec. If it takes through September for that to happen, you'll see me down here until it happens. And second, I do support, again, with others, the funding for Morris Park Pool. That thing needs to be taken care of. It's a historical heritage piece for the neighborhood, for the community as a whole, and it's a black mark on our citizens and our administration that it ever got to the point that it's at. The population of the city has backed this for a long time. There have been a lot of fundraisers. There's been a lot of effort put into this. The community has stepped forward and raised funds for the evaluation of what it would take to fix the pool, and I think that you've been told very plainly and clearly the public wants this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time? Anyone else? Seeing no one, we will move on with our agenda. The next is a presentation by the Office of the City Attorney on the SimTab settlement update, and I'm assuming that is Amanda that will be doing that. Is that correct, Greg?
That's correct.
All right. Amanda, you can either sit where the mayor normally sits, or if you wanted to go down and sit in the well, it's up to you.
Answering questions might be.
Okay, thank you. And as council members remember, this is an issue that came up with a number of council members being concerned over properties owned by this particular entity. And based on that and work with the city attorney's office, a lawsuit was filed. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda O'Boyle, who represented the city in this case.
All right, good evening, everybody. As Council President Wood summarized, this was a lawsuit that was initiated by the city in conjunction with the Department of EDP, who had gone out and tagged 2222 West Holmes, a property that suffered significant damage upon them doing roof work without a permit, that later found upon further investigation that many of the properties owned by that same owner, SimTab Properties, had a lot of problems across the board. So the city initiated a lawsuit. We filed for public nuisance, and I'm happy to report that SimTab immediately came to the table, admitted that they had made a number of issues and problems. They are relatively new to the work of doing rental properties, and we're very open to a discussion with the city about how could they get into compliance, what were the conditions that the city needed, and how could they meet those expectations. Fairly rapidly, we reached a settlement in that case that encompassed all 21 properties owned by SimTab. And I provided you guys with a memo that kind of outlines the terms of that settlement, but we found that it was a good resolution. It set fairly strict timelines for those properties to be brought into compliance. It resulted in them paying the city money back that were spent by HRCS on hoteling for people who had been displaced by that West Holmes address, and agreements that they would bring those properties into compliance, even though the initial lawsuit only related to the West Holmes address.
Amanda, I know we have the memo in front of us, but the public might not. So could you go through the points that were part of the settlement, please?
Sure. So first and foremost, SimTab agreed to correct all of the violations that were cited by code enforcement. That was with respect to anything in inspection reports, safety letters, building letters, fire department letters across the board. We set strict timelines for pulling permits.
Just
And-
just one second. Councilmember Spitzley?
Thank you, Madam President. Is that just at 2222, or is it, because, you know, he sent people to his property on Kalamazoo that was also pink tagged. So I'm wondering, does the settlement encompass all of his properties that are?
Yes,
Problem
it is with
properties?
respect to all 21 properties, and the other address that you just referenced, the 1317 Kalamazoo, was just inspected this past Friday and was up to code and is going to be issued a certificate
Thank you.
shortly.
Thank you.
I have Councilmember Cost, who was ready to jump out of his seat. So Councilmember Cost.
I'm sorry, thank you, President Wood. You said it was inspected and passed on Friday?
That is correct.
Okay. I was there yesterday. There was piles of trash, furniture laying in the front parking lot. So, are we sure that it passed?
per my discussion with the department director, it passed the inspection, which was for obviously the inside of the units. There may be initial new trash violations or things along those lines, but really the goal here is items that were cited in safety letters, the inspection reports, building
Okay.
safety correction notices, things along those lines.
And just quickly, what, the timeline, so as we go through this timeline, what is the first date, like that date and the timeline starts?
So
Is
the
it June
timeline
9th?
started from the execution of the settlement agreement.
So June 9th then? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. So as I noted, there are strict timelines in terms of pulling permits, and then after a permit is pulled for any necessary work, a strict deadline to complete that work within 60 days. For any violations that are not subject to a permit, there's 45 days. Now, we do have in there that should an unexpected circumstance arise or a particularly difficult project needs to be undertaken. For example, maybe the roofs need to be replaced and the person who's got to do the roof work isn't available until X date. They have the ability to reach out to the city and reach a cooperation, an agreed upon date that might be past these dates that are in the settlement agreement, but these are the initial deadlines, and I have yet to have them reach out and ask for any specific extensions as of yet. As noted, they have an obligation to provide alternative housing for any tenants who are displaced due to pink tags or red tags, and then separately agreeing to reimburse the city $10,091.78 for hoteling fees that the city incurred when it housed people from 2222 West Holmes. There's also a provision in there that should they sell any of the properties in the time frame of this agreement being in place, that they will either A, remain on the hook even if they are no longer the owners, or alternatively, provide money into escrow that will guarantee that the work that needs to be done will be completed, and the city has to sign off on the amount of money that has been set aside. And then, as I noted, a separate agreement by the city to do that inspection of 1317 East Kalamazoo within 2 weeks, which I noted was completed last Friday, and that the city will do rental inspections in good faith and try to complete those within 40 days upon their request, and our dismissal of the pending litigation that was filed in the 30th Circuit Court. That summarizes most of the agreement, but if you guys have any more specific questions, please let me know.
Are there any other questions for Ms. O'Boyle? I'm not seeing any hands. Councilmember Hussein.
I don't have a question, but I think it's critical. So, based on the timeline that was just laid out for us, essentially what that means is that all permits must be pulled by, of course, unless there's an extension, by July 9th. That any work not subject to permits must be done by July 24th, right? So for the record, and if you guys want to include in your notes. And then August 7th is 60 days from the final date to pull permits, which at that time, any work that was permitted must be done. And so we're in a tight timeline. So I certainly hope they make those benchmarks, because this is, anybody that's been out to any one of these 21 properties or visited these, I don't know, some 700 doors, knows that it's crisis level. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we want to thank you, and we want to thank you for the success and coming to this agreement. We felt, from a council perspective, that it was extremely important, and the reason we asked for this briefing in a committee of a whole meeting is for any other property owner in the city of Lansing that believes that we're not taking these issues seriously will see that we are. We are taking these very seriously, and that we are more than willing to go to court if that's how we have to handle these situations. So thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to our next, which is ordinances, and that's the recodification, readoption for the codified ordinances. And I would turn to Councilmember Hussein.
Sure. So as we have done since 2018, so that we don't have any lapse with regard to our ordinances, we are on an annual basis readopting the codified ordinances. And so with that said, I would move the ordinance.
We have the readoption in front of us, and this will put it on the agenda for council this evening. Are there any questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next we have is the resolution for the fiscal year end of 2022-23 and a budget amendment for 2023-24. And as council members are well aware of, at the end of the year, we have the vacancy factor, and that vacancy factor then has to be moved out and put in where other departments, such as police and fire, that might have had overtime, that it helps pay for those. We also have our HRCS dollars that had not been utilized as part of that fiscal year. Our budget resolution says that they can be carried forward. We need an explanation as to why they were not utilized, and that was presented, and our internal auditor presented that memo to you today with the explanation from the department. We are not, I want to say this again, we are not allocating the dollars from HRCS. We're just carrying forward them. When they are ready to be allocated again, then they will come back to the council to be reallocated. Then lastly, we have the $15,000, which is in our current budget cycle that we're in, and for city council, and we're carrying that forward to fill some of the holes that we have still in the council budget. This would bring up council members' office holders' accounts, as well as our community funding and community promotions. Now, we could have just as easily said, go out and spend all your money, and because you're not going to have any more, but the administration worked with us, and we are carrying forward this $15,000 for the next year's budget. So with that, who do we have here, Shelby, to go over this?
I
And
believe
then-
Mrs. Kirkland's here.
Okay.
Maybe Jackson.
And then we do have our internal auditor that will answer any other questions that we might have. You want to run us through the resolution, please?
Yeah. So the first part of the resolution is for fiscal year '23. And that is basically allocating out the opioid settlement dollars that were received this current fiscal year. Those are going equally to police, fire, and HRCS operating expenses. As for the HRCS carry forward, there were $728,521 in Human Services Agencies operating that were unspent. And then racial justice and equity, $135,000 that were unspent. As for the city-supported agencies, there was $262,165 that were unspent for Racial Justice Equity Alliance. And then the rest is basically, as Council Member Wood stated, it was allocating out the $700,000 of vacancy factor that was budgeted for in the FY23 budget.
Councilmember Spitzley, and then Councilmember Spatafor, then Councilmember Spitzley.
I can wait. I just have a couple questions about the HRCS, the Human Services Agency carry forwards. These are the dollars that are designated by city ordinance to be allocated to, sorry, the 1.5?
1.35%.
Yeah,
Yep.
1.35. There's a lot carry forward here. I mean, maybe not in the grand scheme of a large budget, but there's a lot that's carrying forward. Will that be rolled into this year's allocation and then distributed through the grant application process, or are we carrying it forward to, and I know you made mention we're not allocating right now, but this is a question I want answered, please. Or
if
will
you-
it go to the agencies that were identified previously?
Councilmember Spatafor, if you look at the,
Did I miss something?
our memo that we got
there it is.
this afternoon from Emily, on the back page, it shows the HRCS, and it shows
Got it.
why they didn't allocate those dollars. Either they were, didn't meet contracts, or they weren't going to do what they had asked for, or the fact that there were dollars that were replaced with other dollars.
This is the memo that came this afternoon?
Yes.
I apologize for not doing my
Not a
homework.
problem. We didn't, Tony Young's mother had passed away, and so we didn't get this information until noon today, and Emily got that out.
I appreciate, I'm sorry it was in the memo and asked the question, but thank you for
Not
the
a
clarification.
problem. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Madam President. So on the opioid settlement funds, and if you've already mentioned this, I apologize, I don't remember. It says it's distributed evenly among police, fire, and HRCS departments. So do you know, or do you have an idea of what each department is going to be using that $122,000 for?
Okay. It has to be used according to the agreement for Narcan. Any type of services that those departments provide for Narcan.
Okay.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yeah, just as a point of information regarding that, Emergent Bioport, here in town? Emergent Biosolutions.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
I'm old. They acquired the company that actually produces Narcan, and I know that they're very interested in partnering with government agencies to find cost-effective, if not free, ways to distribute more Narcan in the community. Just passing that along, had an initial conversation with someone a few weeks ago under the context of these dollars, so
Thank you.
maybe help stretch that out a bit.
Some of this is, I'm assuming, is to buy Narcan equipment, and whether there's social services dealing with narcotics. I mean, those types of things, and overtime for possibly for the work that they're doing out there in the field. Are there? Yes, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. So I know that we don't allocate nothing, but I do have a few questions about the racial equity carry forward, and why is it out of the entire budget in the entire every department, entire, the only unused money is the line items racial justice and equity, when that's been first around for a few years, but also we determined it's basically a public health crisis. Right. And we have so many groups that were designed with all the names to study it or whatever, but then now I read the specific explanation wherever it went, but it basically said that they plan to use, a future plan to use that money to create a study and to talk with residents in 2 wards to figure out what, if anything, should happen. So I guess, sure, we're gonna carry it forward because it wasn't used, but it's just concerning that that's one of the only things that's unused at a time like this.
Is there anyone from the department that wants to address that at this time? Kim, if you would come forward to the, in the well, and then Councilmember Spitzley, welcome.
Thank you, Madam President. And while Ms. Coleman's coming down, I'm going to concur. I thought that was very odd. I mean, when we started this, we set aside money for studies. We've done surveys, we've done studies, we've done focus groups. And now the money is going to be specifically used for another study in only 2 wards. And so, I mean, in my mind, I feel like we've been studied to death, and with little action or little action plans on how we're going to address this. So I'm a little concerned as well and would like some clarity. Thank you.
And again, and I know council members understand this, that, you know, we are asking some questions on this. Right now, all we're doing is carrying this forward, and the department will have to come back before they can spend any of that money, and we'll have an opportunity again to discuss it, but I appreciate your question.
And I appreciate you saying that, but I think that for us saying it right now, maybe that will give the administration
And I
pause-
absolutely agree.
pause.
That's
Yeah, thank you.
not a problem. Ms. Coleman, if you could make sure the green light is on when you, down at the bottom, okay.
On.
Yep. we can-
Good evening, all. Your question with regard to the race and equity dollars. The funds that were provided us, the $135,000 that we were awarded, maybe a little over a year ago, we put out several attempts to get information from community to find out what services they thought would be beneficial to address root causes. What we learned is that we didn't get any responses, and that people really didn't know, and it was hard to fund programs to address what they thought were root causes if they weren't able to give us that directly. So we had to change our approach. I believe when we first talked about this, I suggested that we would be doing a request for information. That is what we did. It didn't render the outcomes that we had hoped, so we went back with a request for proposal to contract with a local organization to gather that information for us so that we would also then get recommendations for services and programs. We have contracted with MPHI last year, July, and so much of that is already being spent. What we didn't get to spend was the money just prior to. We also had attempted to contract with MSU, at which time we weren't able to settle whatever the agreements were among legal to address real property. And so we had to let that one go, which was wards 2 and 3, and we went with wards 1 and 4. They should be completing or wrapping up their study, giving us a recommendation for programs and services somewhere around August, September, at which time then we will present that information. We will put out a bid for proposals to run the programs and or services that they recommended as a result of their collaboration with businesses and residents in those 2 wards. We slowed our roll with regard to the wards 2 and 4 until we could get this one settled, because we had a lot of other contracts in the midst, which includes the other $200 and some odd thousand that you referenced with regard to race and equity. Again, we had to put out a request for proposals. We identified 3 local contractors to assist us with carrying out that MRJEA report and recommendation. They are in process, and much of that money has already been spent, so to speak. We just haven't paid them for it just yet for carrying out the services. So they are in the process of doing that. That would be, again, MPHI. That would be the advocacy group, and that would also be, that's the MPHI advocacy group, and Miller Canfield. That's actually doing our work.
Just to clarify, to make sure that there isn't a miscommunication, what I thought I heard you just say is that most of the money is spent. That would be an encumbrance, not a carry forward. So, Jackson, is this a carry forward?
The $863,521 for the Human Services agencies, that is a carry forward. There are no encumbrances in our system. One solution for that, it's just unused money that wasn't spent. Those are carrying forward.
This
in,
fiscal-
from 22 into 23.
Right, in this current fiscal year.
Yes.
They're
Okay.
always a year.
I know it's been a while since I've been in school, but I also know that when you have a purchase order out and you haven't paid someone, you encumber those dollars so that they're not spent and you know that you're going to be paying them when the product is done. So is any of this, maybe I'm not, making myself clear, is any of this work that's being currently done that you're going to pay for after July 1st?
Has it already been done? That's-
Or is this unused funds? I mean, it's one or the other.
It's unused funds in FY '22. Now, they might have expended some in FY '23, but the funds that were not spent in FY '22, those are the numbers that are being carried forward to FY '23.
Well, where I took accounting,
Well, I just have a, Councilmember Perez.
council members Spatafor.
How do, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, so are we in FY '23 now and you're doing a carry forward from last year's budget?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. This is the same as last year as well. I made sure the $760,000.
It lags.
It lags, yep. And we always have to wait until the audit's
So
complete.
this resolution puts, I do actually read my packet, everyone, I just want to, so this resolution puts FY '22 money into the '23 budget?
Yes, correct.
This isn't even touching the '24 budget?
No, the only thing that's touching the 24 is the council carry forward for 15,000.
Are we all on the same page now? So I guess the question then to Director Coleman would have been the dollars that you have encumbered, if that's the right word, for the study with MPHI, those haven't been done yet, and you anticipate them being done yet, not this year, obviously, in fiscal year '24 then?
The contract with MPHI for root causes was signed last year, July, and it's going to end somewhere between July and August. And so payments have already been made towards those contracts.
So
The
the-
final payment won't be made until we have received our final
I
report.
see everybody over there. Just a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
The total contract was 135,000?
The total contract with them was 67.5, and there was another 67.5 that was going to be used for MSU.
Okay.
So there's 67.5
But
that
some
was
of
not
it's already
awarded.
paid.
That's right. There was 67.5 that was not awarded,
Okay.
and then there was 67.5 that has been paid in increments. The final payment will be due in July or upon receipt of the report.
So the $135,000 in this memo, though, is, for all practical purposes, mostly already spent.
I don't think
Yes.
they know what they're saying.
Yes,
Okay.
That-
I'm done, thank you.
that-
yes.
Okay, just so that we're all on the same page. With the comments that Councilmember Spatafor made, what we're doing is closing out for the end of this fiscal year that we're in. These are the carry forwards, this is the vacancy factor, this is for this fiscal year. Okay, because the way it sounded from what you were saying, it was the prior fiscal year.
That's what it is. This is an FY '23 budget.
That's the budget we're currently in.
I know, but we're using, this is an FY '22-23 budget, and we're,
We haven't gone in, July 1st is when the new budget starts.
understood, yes. And the only thing that's carrying forward, we're bringing money from the old budget to '23, and the only thing for next year is the adjustment is '24. So we haven't even started carry forwards for unspent money in '23. Is that correct? I don't want to argue with you.
When I'm saying prior years, that would be the 21-22 budget. And then we're not saying that this is that budget.
No, we're not saying
All right.
21, 22.
Okay, then
No,
we're,
we're not saying
then
21,
we're
22.
good. Okay. Sorry for the hand, guys.
That's okay.
All right.
It wasn't,
Coun-
it didn't go.
Councilmember.
So we're safe, we're safe.
Councilmember Spitzley, then Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess I'm still trying to figure out, is the $135,000 number in this document proper, or should it be 67? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So, which number should it be?
Well, 135,000 was not spent in FY '22, so that 135,000, if approved, would move
Oh.
into FY '23, current fiscal year.
So,
It would increase the,
See, you are talking about.
no, I think I know what happened.
Councilmember Brown.
So that's why when we're looking at this, or at least myself, it says 76.5 MSU and 76.5 MPHI. And, I'm sorry, 60, thank you, 67.5. And then you're saying that some of the money, Director Coleman is saying some of the money has been spent, and we're not seeing where it's been spent. And then you're saying it's carrying forward, and she's saying it's already been obligated.
it wasn't spent in FY '22, meaning like the contracts span across multiple fiscal years.
Right, that's what it is.
So
But she just said July is when they signed the contract, and she's been making
Yeah.
payments.
Right.
This does not show any payments being made at all. Is this, are we looking at the same document?
what document's that?
It's the report on the back of Emily's memo.
He's looking at that one.
Yeah,
They're looking for something that I don't know if they've got.
this is where
Yeah,
we're,
this one.
so we're talking about this,
This one or? No?
no, behind that.
Shelby, there should be a memo dated the 26th that was updated today right there on the table, if you don't have it. And the last, it's landscape.
No.
Nope,
It's the last
Landscape.
it's the
page.
landscape.
Okay, now you got it.
Got it?
So what we're saying is that none of the money has been spent. Director Coleman is saying that they've done the service, and, you know, whether 70% or whatever amount has been paid, and then there's just the remainder will be finished when the report is due, which will go into the next fiscal year. But what we're looking at is showing that nothing has been paid, and so that's why President Wood is making her comments versus a carryover versus we've already encumbered.
Yeah, and I would have to check the actuals for that specific line item, but there is, I think, 140-some thousand, the 0.1% allocation in the ordinance. It's 1.35% for human service allocation, 0.1% is for racial justice equity. So there is money in there right now in FY '23. This would increase the FY '23 number from FY '22's unspent money.
But you're talking about,
Go ahead.
but you're talking about the 135 was from the initial, when it was approved.
Yes, in FY '22, yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
that's what this here that we're looking at is talking about.
Hmm.
So that was the exact amount that was approved, which was the 1%. I mean, the 1/10%.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Yep.
So off of this contract that they did with MPHI, the services have been rendered, let's say 75%, and 75% of payment has been made in increments, what we heard from Director Coleman just now. This does not show that. It shows 67,500 needs to be no actual, and then it needs to be carried forward in the total amount.
I do believe when Des indicated that it goes across budget years, I believe that's what we're faced with, is going across budget years. If I remember correctly, when we met and talked about this, we talked about how we accumulated another 135,000 on top of the funds that we were attempting to spend. That made any sense?
Director Coleman, do you
That there
have
was
this document?
Right, I have that document right here. I do have that
The
document.
landscape one?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, we were the ones that helped put it together. I have it right here.
Okay.
So it does go across budget years, and maybe that's why it's lending itself to so many different interpretations.
Well-
But I can tell you that the payments that were made to the company that we're paying, one happened in '22, and I believe there was one that happened in '23. And I believe the final payment, the third payment, will be happening in July or August of '23. And so I think that's where some of the confusion is coming from.
Well, can I ask you a question then? I was not in council when this started. I was on the HRCS board, so I do remember you working very diligently with your staff to get the request for information out. From that time, I remember these proposals that came forward, MSU and MPHI, which they were very in-depth and very profound. It was phenomenal to see. My question would be, is this the same proposal from that time?
This is,
So there's not an additional proposal?
no,
So then, what I'm looking at, it would say that if there's 67,500, that was from the initial proposal, which was a few years back. So then, in my understanding, it would be the 67,500 that would be contracted for MPHI. If you've made payments, it should not say MPHI here at 65,000 with no payments. Because we're looking at actuals at zero, and then it's saying a balance of 67,500 with a 67,500 carry forward. And then she's saying that they've already done the work, so we owe the money to that organization.
Yeah, that's been paid out of FY '23. What you're looking at is FY '22 actuals. So there were no payments in FY '22 yet, so it'd be 135,000. But there would be a payment in FY '23, which would be the 67,500.
But she's saying, if I understand you correct, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the contract amount for MPHI was 67,500, not 135,000.
that is correct.
That's the problem.
Yes, there were initially two contracts. One was for wards 1 and 4, the others were 2 and 3. The wards for 2 and 3, I don't know exactly what happened to that, but that didn't go through, so it was only the 67,500, which was spent this current fiscal year.
So the contract with MPHI would be 135,000, not 67,500? That's what I'm saying.
The contract with MPHI was for 67.5. The contract with MSU, which did not realize, was 67.5.
Correct. That's what my understanding was. But so this document is saying, not saying what you're saying, sir. Yeah, so that's why he's saying that that's why there's another 67.5 for MPHI to cross over. But it should show MSU 67.5 never got accomplished, so that's zero, so that's a carry forward. And it should show 67.5, and if she made 40,000 in payments, then only 20,000 carryover, or whatever that we would not owe. Would that be correct, President Wood?
It sounds correct to me, but
Okay.
Councilmember Spitzley, and then, or Councilmember Spatafor.
What's the deadline on getting this done?
Today is the deadline.
Well, FY '22 was a while ago.
Well, and and let me tell you, that's the thing I'm trying to figure out. I cannot ever remember the fact that we have a closeout from the fiscal year along with the audit done, and we're doing carry forwards for FY '22. I mean, that, we don't do that. This is supposed to be a carry forward for '23. Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say it, that's the whole issue with the audit, in the audits and some of the findings in the audit in the first place. I don't understand how we can have fiscal '22 monies still floating out there unencumbered. I just don't understand that. Someone explain to me, that's my question, explain to me how we can have fiscal '22 monies and we're at the end of fiscal '23 unencumbered for a whole year, and and council doesn't know about that. We've been through budgets, we've been through budget conversations, and not once did I hear that we have dollars that have not been that have not been spent from fiscal 20, ma'am.
Tony, just a minute.
So from fiscal '22. So explain to me, I just need to know how that happens.
So unfortunately, it's because of their contracts, their agreements cross fiscal years. And so you have this overlapping that we see when we do the financial records. So after the audit is done, after all of these things come up, we see that there is still money that HRCS did not spend in their calendar, in the fiscal year, because their contracts cross over
Yeah.
calendar years. And that's why we come back to you, even though the fiscal year is over, we have it sitting out there as still money that is, the contract has been approved, it says that they're gonna provide the service hasn't been provided completely in the fiscal year, so therefore we have a calendar year contract and a fiscal year time period. So we have to come back to you and say, these dollars have been allocated to this contract, but now we need to make sure that the money is in the correct fiscal year.
Well.
So that's the
ju-
overlapping.
Just for some clarification, and I know I try very hard not to talk about my other job, my day job, but I have a contract, and my contract is for the fiscal year. It doesn't start until July 1st, and I have to have all my money spent or return it to you by June 30th.
And I understand that. We don't control the contracts, we just do, we do the accounting for it. So we don't say all contracts have to be on the fiscal year. We have lots of contracts that are on calendar year, that we run into this issue, that we have to be mindful of that.
Councilmember Spitzley.
I get that, but, at the end of the day, you guys don't handle contracts, but you handle dollars. And so at the end of the day, your balance sheet has the balance. And so it's either, HRCS had a fund balance last year of $135,000, which I don't know if they can do that, or we needed to know during budget that there was this $135,000 or whatever out there. To me, it just, I'm just confused as to how that even happened.
Councilmember Spatafor.
If I can redirect real quick, what's the timeline on replacing our accounting software?
Next year.
Yesterday.
It will be done next year. They're already starting the,
Calendar or fiscal, no, I'm serious, how long?
it will start in March. It has already started
Okay.
with the cloud-based systems being updated and getting that going. It's supposed to really come in with the system update in March of next year, and it's gonna take us, it's gonna cross the fiscal year, but it's gonna be by July of '24 where we'll have it in place.
Didn't we just pay an exorbitant amount of money to an outside firm to rush creation of our chart of accounts so that we could do this by the
Yes.
fiscal year?
We didn't, we paid $20,000 to Maynard to help us with the chart of accounts, which is different than the general ledger system.
But we've also made 2 payments
Okay.
to BS&A.
We made one payment to BSNA. And we don't have to make another payment. And matter of fact, they did give us concession per your all request, because we thought we were gonna start this process this year, and we found out that it's not gonna start until really the implementation until next year, and they did give us a concession.
Some of this may clear up with a more user-friendly software
Yes.
system?
Yes.
Okay, I've got Councilmember Jackson, then Councilmember Spitzley, and then we have to understand what we have to do this evening to be able to move forward and to be able to say we've closed out our books.
Call it a carry forward, call it an encumbrance. I think
Call it crap, go ahead.
we're losing sight of a big concern. If we have to go back in history, remember 2020 happened. Before the pandemic, black people were getting pulled over and killed. The pandemic happened. Black people naturally, inherently have underlying health conditions that exacerbated death. Black people don't have the same access to health care to even get it fixed. So we as city council did what we did, and the best we could come up with is making that smallest percentage I've heard of, 0.1% to go over to help work on these things. And it's not just black people, it's brown people, it's poor people. So now I'm hearing that there's some crap from 2022, but the crap is what was supposed to be our big, huge move to do something. We're like, we're city council. We're gonna do this. We got some money for you. And then that doesn't get used, so it gets moved over to a couple years. And apparently last year, 23, 22 isn't used. And then I'm learning that we're gonna do the study. It takes me back to going to do the study. We have, apparently it was a RIP, FIP, whatever it's called, put out. You didn't get any answers. We don't know what to do. The community's split on what's a good idea. Well, first, we have MSU, a major research institution. They have a Department of Education. They have Department of Urban Development. They have Department of Criminal Justice. They have Department of African American Studies. LCC has similar departments. And if anybody, cares to look, we could start with housing insecurity, food insecurity, divestment in the community, no after-school activities, over-policing that leads to convictions, that leads to people being forced out of legitimate job opportunities, falling behind in school, poor reading, public education, inadequate access to early childhood education, lack of legitimate opportunities, low access to health care. Those are things like the academics already can point to. So there's something to start with, and I appreciate that this is on the radar now. And I'm not offended or upset, but it's just kind of disheartening. We lose context of the conversation to where we're going to put this leftover money that wasn't used. But this has been everybody's priority for a long time. And a long time is at least since 2020, if not before. And I'm just looking forward to this going towards something with a plan. Even if it doesn't work, it's better than accumulating in the crap zone. Thank you.
Councilmember Spitzley, and then
Thank you, Madam
Is your
President.
hand on the-
I agree. I don't think anybody up here has lost sight of, we've had monies that we've allocated that have not done. And we've had, 4 different councils and commissions since 2020 that have been appointed and disbanded and appointed and disbanded and now we have a new executive order with nothing done in the community for the dollars that have been this 1%. So you are absolutely right. Everything you said is absolutely right. But at the end of the day, the procedure is the procedure. And I don't feel comfortable voting for this. I don't know what we're voting on. I'm not comfortable and confident in the numbers, so I need to know what we're gonna do about it. If you're telling us that today is the deadline, that gets back to a whole number of things, that we get stuff like this, and then we find errors, and, then it's the deadline, and we have to make a move. And when we don't make a move, we get vilified in the public, because we did make a move, all of that. But I need to know, what are our options right now, today? What Councilmember Jackson said is 1,000% correct. So I'm not trying to dilute what he said or discard it, but as a body, we have to make a decision on this stuff today. And I don't know what that is. We can't, parse it out. It's either an up or down. So if we voted down, what happens?
Okay, we'll get to that just a second.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Spitzley. Not to discard what you said or Councilmember Jackson said. I think what probably should have happened is, historically, at the close of the audit, we should have seen a carry forward amendment come before us, which is why President Wood and I have been pushing for more regular updates and amendments. We've gotten that commitment from the administration. It seems that this is just something we probably should have done as a matter of course. It does make sense to me, as we've spent some time sort of fleshing this out, what it is. I believe these numbers to be accurate once we've figured out which fiscal years they belong in, which is why there is a drawdown from the fund balance, right? Coming from the fund balance, because it's been stored there. Maybe should have been encumbered in a different budget amendment. But I'm comfortable moving forward, hearing the explanation, specifically knowing that a lot of this stuff will go to some good causes in our community, and knowing that we will have a little bit more regular updates in the future so that we don't have this conversation in June of next year. So that'd be my last of my $863,000 worth of 2 cents.
Shelby?
Thanks. I'm just going to see if I can take a stab at explaining how these work. So typically every year when finance receives a contract, especially when it's a multi-year contract, we enter what they call a PO, a purchase order, into our system, which essentially encumbers those funds or locks those funds up in our budget system. So every time they run a report, it will show those funds have been spent or planned to be spent, so they're not available for other things. So what happens at the end of the fiscal year, June 30, we're supposed to have all of the bills in for all of the contracts that we have for that current fiscal year. So what happens if a vendor submits a bill, we only have 60 days past the end of the fiscal year to actually account for it in our system. So if we get a bill September 1st, I can no longer charge it to that fiscal year. It has to go to the future year. So what happened, what I believe in this case, what I heard from Kim, is that the work's already happened because this was a multi-year contract. And we likely received a bill after when we could book it to 22. So what Kim was suggesting is that, hey, the work's been happening, it's ongoing, we have a multi-year contract, and we didn't receive the actual invoice in time for it to charge to fiscal year 22. So what we do then, typically when the audit comes and we see that that money was left on the table, is do that carry forward. So yeah, we're a little late this year, and all we can do is make sure our carry forwards happen in the future, December, January timeframe when the audit gets presented. But in this particular case, the work has happened, we owe this money, it's just a matter of the timing of when we received a bill and when the PO was entered into our system. And I know that's a bunch of accounting terms, but essentially it was a timing issue of when we promised to pay these folks and they gave us a bill. And so now all of a sudden we still owe them the money, we plan to spend it in 22, and now we have to push it forward to this current year so we can get these folks paid.
Okay.
Any corrections or argument? Okay, great.
Councilmember Brown?
I was gonna say, that makes sense to me, except did I misunderstood that you said payment had been made already?
Not final payment, no. We do have a final payment that will
have
come due
payments been
upon
made?
completion of the project.
Have payments been made? I heard you say increment payments. So what I don't understand, based on what you said, Ms. Freyer, is that, this would happen if there was no pay, they sent a bill, but no payment was made, and Director Coleman
So
is
remember,
saying-
there's still money in 23 that was spent this year. So think about it as two buckets, and we paid out the 23, the current year bucket, what we have right now, and what we're suggesting right now is moving 22's bucket to 23.
So wouldn't it be less money than 67,500, which is the total amount?
What they're suggesting is that the 22 amount right now is what was left on that table, what they had encumbered and not spent. And they're trying to bring that forward to this current fiscal year to make that final payment for this current year. So we have to make sure we get the bill before August 30th, right, so that we can charge it to this year.
So how much do we owe MPHI?
I don't have the totals in front of me. I'd have to get that information for you, unless Kim has it handy.
I don't have the total before me either.
Okay, here's what have in front of us. You're light, yes?
Yeah, sorry. Councilmember Brown, you may have looked at this, but I just want to highlight it. The FY22 actuals are what's in this. The MPHI contract most likely came out of FY23, which is not in this chart. So this is accurate if we did not spend it in FY22. No, I know that's the point, is they were allocated in 22 and they weren't spent in 22, and Ms. Freyer just explained, at least as I understood it, that the bill probably came in after August of last year, so it would be reflected in FY23's budget, not FY22's, and we're not looking at 23's right now.
I understand that,
Mike, I don't think it's
but the
on.
Deputy Finance Director said that there was a different amount for 2023. The revenue was different, so the 0.1% was different than 67,500.
Okay.
Okay. What we have in front of us is we have the opiate settlement. We also have the vacancy factor. And then we have HRCS, which, from what I'm gathering, is the 2022 dollars, not the 2023, but 2022 dollars, that it's being asked to be carried forward. Again, they cannot spend even those dollars until they come back to council for appropriation. But in order for them to be able to pay bills that are coming in, this is all one resolution, we need to move forward on the resolution. And I would say, I'm looking at our deputy mayor right now, I would say that we need to make sure that we have carry forwards in December so that we're not in the middle of this mess.
Yep, absolutely. We'll plan on doing one with our audit presentation, likely December, January, whenever you folks are available.
Okay, I won't be here, but I will
You can
be
come back for the one
cursing
special.
if this,
It will
Yes.
get done.
I do have your phone number. Okay. All right. I think we all agree also that there is a number of projects and things that are in these HRCS dollars that we want to see some boots on the ground and not just papers in hand. That I think the whole purpose in us moving specific dollars into that category was to make sure that they were utilized, not studydized. There's, whether that's even a word, but it's one I've just coined. Because we are, you can study things until hell freezes over and it doesn't make them any better. Okay? Emily, after we've gone through all of that, as the internal auditor, did you want to add anything?
I think it's been covered, and Shelby's explanation was great. I was gonna say something similar. So, yeah, I don't have any problem with these numbers, but agree that we should get them earlier next year.
Okay. With that, Councilmember Hussein.
Sure. I would move the resolution for fiscal year end 2022, 2023 budget amendment.
All right, we have that. This would be on the council agenda for this evening. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Before we go into closed session, I'd like to take care of these other items on the agenda so that after we come out of closed session, we're able to move forward into the council meeting. The next is a discussion on the resolution to support funding for the Morris Park pool. Councilmember Cost, if you'd like to explain that to us, and then you can move it at that point.
Thank you, President Wood. So this is a resolution to, background is, state legislature has put in their budget $6.2 million for Morris Park Pool. It doesn't say Morris Park Pool, but it is Morris Park Pool, for the repairs that are needed at that pool. So this is a resolution essentially talking about the history of our 101-year-old pool, that it was the design for the oval pool. I think there's 5 left in the country right now that have not been torn down. This is one of them. It hasn't ran since 2019. In case anyone is curious, I have spoken with the administration. They plan to fund it. If the state gives us this money, they will fund it to open it, run it, and they're also looking already towards other revenues for money. And then the excuse me, the Preserve Lansing folks are getting heavily involved now and want to raise private money to maintain the pool as well. That is the remainder of the Bent's pools. That is generally how they do it. They have a friends group that will raise money to help keep the pool preserved. As far as the bill right now, it sounds like it's the number is sliding. So we actually took the bill number out of here because it's changing names. But yeah, that's essentially what this is.
And this is not coming out of the RAP dollars or any other. This is something that was appropriated, put in the appropriations by the Senate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Senate. And so they're the ones that are initiating it. What we're doing is showing our support for those dollars. Are there any questions? Councilmember Spatafor.
Just on the record, Senator Sarah Anthony is chairing the Senate Appropriations Committee, as all of us here know that. But if you look throughout the budget, there are several items that she has worked hard to get in there to support the community here in Lansing. For many, many years, we've been ignored by the state legislature, and it's about time Lansing got what's due. And this contribution towards the preservation of the Morris Park Pool is $6.2 million of that tab, and I appreciate the work that she's doing, and I'm going to happily support this resolution.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, would you like to move the?
Yes, I'd like to move this resolution forward.
Okay, we have a motion on the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. The next item is, in your packet, you will see 3 ordinances that are going on the referral this evening. One has to do with the use of the council chambers. This is bringing it up to date from where it was, what our current ordinance is. The other is the chief strategy officer, and we talked about this when Shelby was before us, and adding some duties into that. And then the last has to do with collection bins. These will be referred back to the city attorney's office and to the appropriate committees, and then once they come out of the city attorney's office, they will be taken up in the committees. So I just wanted you all to have a copy of those. Then lastly, just simply because we had the discussion and there's been several people that have commented, we're going to ask for an update at each committee of a whole meeting to try to know where the temporary and or permanent placement of those departments that are over in SWAT, how that's coming and what that's looking at. So we've got it on today. I don't know if you have any updates for us today or not.
Yep, so nothing final from the last time I came to report. What we're looking at right now is the clerk's office moving to Rio Elementary. The gentleman who runs the Lansing Promise has some vacant space within that building and has offered some, sublease agreement as an option. So our public service team is also helping kind of scope out the scene, make sure it's the right rent and all that fun stuff for us to be able to afford and make sure we can accommodate for our folks. That's not, again, official, that's just where we're looking right now. We also have the 311 center that we're looking to move. We're hoping we can keep folks within space that we already own, so we're not paying rent. So that one's not 100% yet, but we're looking at a couple sites for them, potentially within City Hall. And then we also have public service TV, the folks out there that are at SWAC that take up quite a bit of space. We're looking at moving them to North Cap for right now. And obviously we own it. It's a temporary spot until, of course.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the spot.
I'm sorry, the North Capitol ramp.
Okay.
Where the old Gibsons used to be, and I think there was a sub shop next door. We own it right now, so we could do a little bit of renovation to make that space, accommodate them for a couple of years until their permanent home is available. So again, nothing's official, but that's kind of where we're looking. And of course, our focus is to make sure we're keeping costs down and make folks, have a livable space that we can accommodate all of their storage needs. There is a bunch of records and things out there too that are being gone through and stored properly for record retention. So it's all in the works right now. And then, I'm happy to come back every 2 weeks and give you guys an update.
Okay. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Madam President. You said Rio Elementary School, is that what you said? I thought the Lansing School District was closing that down for major repairs, like heating, air conditioning.
Not that I've heard. Nope. I think there were a few other schools.
Rio Elementary School children are being diverted to Averill or some other school.
Yep, I think they're doing renovations in those buildings right now.
In Rio Elementary School.
Not in Rio, I think.
Yeah, Rio Elementary, I'm just telling you, Rio Elementary School it's been closed, and the students at Rio have been diverted to another school.
A different elementary.
That's why I'm asking. That's why I was wondering.
It sounds like space is available. I'm not the point person working on the logistics of it, but I'll certainly talk to our public service folks and make sure they're aware. Yep.
I think Councilmember Hussein has some information on that. Councilmember Hussein, and then we'll go to Councilmember Koss.
Yeah, so what actually is happening is they've essentially taken Rio offline as an elementary school in perpetuity. And so Lansing Promise is filling that space, and they're subleasing to other groups for that space. They're actually bringing a number of schools together to create more K-8 buildings, and so I believe that's over at Atwood.
Okay. Councilmember Cost.
City TV, I thought that they were gonna move into that building that's next to the Ovation.
I think the plan is to, move them after that's constructed, but we're at least 2 or 3 years out before that'll be ready, so we just need a temporary home.
Okay, well, the building standing though, that they're going into, correct?
I believe they're going inside the Ovation.
I thought they were going into that small building that's right there.
I don't think that's the plan, but I'll double check.
Okay.
And then, just if Rio is a consideration, are we confident with the parking places that will be needed for the clerk's office for that? Because many of the elementary schools in the neighborhoods did not have large parking facilities. And when you're talking elections and all of these other things,
Right.
you have
Accessibility.
to be able to have election workers in there and out, as well as the public.
I understand the clerk's satisfied with this particular location, from what I'm hearing from our folks, but I can follow up with him directly and make sure he's
Okay,
thought of that too.
Thank you. Okay, that takes care of those items, so we will move into closed session. Councilmember Hussein.
Sure, I would move that pursuant to MCL 15.26E, subsection E, that the city council recess in a closed session to consult with the city attorney in connection with the following specific pending litigation, as an open meeting act could have a detrimental financial effect on the litigating or settlement position of the city of Lansing concerning these cases. Specifically, Atkinson et al. Versus City of Lansing et al., Charter Township of Lansing versus Barb Byram, Ingham County Clerk, and City of Lansing versus OCOF Nonprofit Housing Corporation, City of Lansing et al. Versus Purdue Pharma et al., DePreco versus City of Lansing et al., Freeman versus City of Lansing, Hardy Gregory versus City of Lansing et al., Hulam versus City of Lansing et al., Karami versus City of Lansing et al., Legacy 5 LLC versus City of Lansing, Lugo Estic versus City of Lansing, Lynn versus City of Lansing, Phillips versus City of Lansing et al., Stewart G versus City of Lansing et al., Stewart S versus City of Lansing et al., and Taft versus City of Lansing et al. And then as part of this motion, I'm also asking that the body honor Ms. Shelby Freyr's request to be part of the closed session. Thank you.
We have a motion before us. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Wood?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein?
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor?
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley? Yes. Councilmember Jackson? Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Cost?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, we are in recess, and we will come back out when closed session is done. Okay. Call the council meeting, or the committee meeting, the committee of whole meeting back to order, and we are adjourned. We'll have about 5 minutes, and then we'll go into our council meeting.